Gabriel Lija jippreżenta Wiċċ b'Wiċċ mal-Annej li wassalna sa Ritmu Roots Festival 2025.
Nilqakom għal l-aħħar programm ta' Wiċċ b'Wiċċ mal-Annej din is-sensiela ta' dawn is-sitt episodji illi fihom esplorajna il-folklor Malti, grazzi wkoll anke għas-sosten ta' Festivals Malta u RTK103 illi meta mort b'din l-idea tnejn li huma oġbithom u irnexxielna inwettquha. U llum miegħi m'għandix Annej kif kelli l-ġimgħa li għaddiet m'għandi l-ħadd bl-istrumenti tradizzjonali Maltin, imma għandi lil xi ħadd li se jkun qiegħed jiddokumenta dan kollu. Miegħi għandi lil Vincent illi huwa artist tal-films Franċiż, independent filmmaker, fotografu, kif ukoll anki inġinier tal-ħsejjes, sound artist, illi jħobb joħloq dawn il-prattiċi ħanejtek immersivi ħafna fil-waqt illi jiddokumenta il-mużika ta' ħafna pajjiżi differenti, jħobb anki jivvjaġġa b'sempliċiment kamera bi ftit affarijiet biex jiddokumenta il-post bliktar mod ħanejtek raw minn elementi forsi oħra. U tajb insemmu il-Limun se jkun qed anki jagħmel workshop fil-21 ta' Mejju li ġej fis-7:30 ta' filgħaxija fl-Splendid u mbagħad l-għada is-sibt ġewwa l-ġonna tal-Argotti se jkun mhux l-għada għaliex fil-21 ikun l-erba' u mbagħad is-sibt se jkun qed jagħmel cinema live u se nitkellmu aktar dwar dan għandi daqsxejn eċitament artist kbir. Vincent Moon, I'm saying that I'm very excited. And
Wow.
that was
It's a very lovely way to say you're excited. Thank you so much for.
and that was a very short interview in Maltese.
It's funny, I was if I could just react to that. It's the first time that I'm in Malta, but it's also the first time I hear Maltese over such a long, 1 or 2 minutes long. And I just realized how much it combined many imaginary lands in my mind. It seemed that I was traveling, bouncing back into different islands from the Mediterranean Sea. But actually, we are in Malta. Yeah.
Yes, and this is your first time here in Malta.
It's my very first time. Yeah, I just arrived last night, so everything's like completely fresh. And as I was sharing with Andrew Alamango, who's like this festival director, and who invited me here, I really love to travel without any preparation. That's really a fantastic luck maybe I have, but I'm always welcomed anywhere I go by local people, underground scene, especially in music or arts and so on. And the fact of basically being so unprepared allows you to completely wonder, to magical surprise, to be like, wow, I had no idea, And I think this feeling of like being in front of something, someone, being in a place and having this going through you, I had no idea, is a very joyful thing,
So you don't know anything about Malta?
Very little.
Very
Very little.
little.
I mean, yesterday I knew very little. Today I know a bit more.
A bit more.
Yes.
I'm
quite
curious about your stage name. Moon, Vincent Moon.
more. Yeah.
Can you tell us in short?
Well, the stage name, it's Vincent is my second name, sort of. Mathieu is my first name. But then Vincent Moon comes from a character by Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentinian writer. It's a name that, at the end of my teenage years, which were complicated, I was extremely shy.
You were extremely shy.
Extremely, to a point, it was very difficult for me to address anybody really. And I had to kind of, put a hood on me or put a mask simply, to kind of be able to express myself. At the time, I was not making films yet. I was doing photography. And it took me I had to do this. It was to me at the time the only way I could sort of like face the world and show my first images, I could not do it under my own name. I had to kind of like pretend I was someone else. And I think I've been always playing with masks since then. And I think so, and in a sense you could say my own work is a large research on identities in a way all around the world.
Yeah, you're a filmmaker. But how did you start?
I started basically, I started by being a huge music lover. And especially I started to approach music by still photography. So when I was 19, 20 years old, I was still living in Paris. I grew up in Paris. And the great thing about at least living in that city, that I had access to so much different artistic elements, you know, music, paintings, obviously cinema everywhere, and more. And so I would sort of like go all around the place like that. And I started to feel so much in love with music and live music that I wanted to document it. And I started to develop my own style of trying to approach music on stage and so on. And little by little, this took me to kind of like work a bit more closely with some bands back in the days, especially it was like the early 2000s, so more in the field of what we called at the time indie rock, indie music in general. And so I had to get really close to some bands like The National or Beirut or sort of like mostly North American music. And so from still photography, I moved towards basically making moving images, you know, with little video cameras, trying to document music in a very intimate way. And actually trying to document reality with almost no money involved. And I think that's always been my DIY ethos, in a sense, you know, trying to make a lot maybe, but with very little. How can you achieve recording reality around you, making films with musicians and so on, with very little money involved? And that's something I've always been doing until now, you know. I'm not really at all a big production guy. I don't write any things to get fundings or anything. I just basically find a method that I can just travel the world with my camera, my recorders, and meet people and portray them, you know.
And how many countries have you visited now? Do you have
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
No idea. I never counted. No, I don't know. I've made more or less now. Also, all of my work is on my website, vincentmoon.com. Everything is like available for free. Everything is like, I'm defending a lot the open source ethos. I'm completely a non-proprietary type of relationship with reality. And I've made more than 1,500 films probably, you know. So, and I keep making many films, more or less 100 films, or like basically sequences, short films mostly, not only, but I make around 100 films a year, because that's my way to encounter people, my way to kind of like create a very intense, you know, meetings place in between, is to make a film.
Għal dawk li tiseguna, Vincent għadu kif qal li jagħmel madwar 100 film f'sena. I'm just translating to Maltese. Vincent,
wow, that was a very short
yes
thing. It's good. I trust you.
If I had to ask you, was there a time when you were afraid while filming, like that shyness from those teenage years? Did it come back again at some point in your career while you're filming? Because sometimes there are some ethical dilemmas. You film prayer rituals, you film fights, like music is in everything, in food.
Well, let's face it, I think I was very surprised while going around the world, because after those early years filming, as I said, mostly Western forms of music, rock, pop, and so on, I started to travel by myself with a backpack, and then I really discovered other forms of music that I really, again, had no idea about. You know, I just went, and then on the spot I realized, oh, this is what people mentioned as traditional music, but it's not traditional in that sense. For me, it's very alive, local, village music, for example, you know. And little by little, as you sort of like quickly mentioned, I started to really record a lot of ceremonies, prayers, spiritual behaviors, collective, you know, gatherings around a divinity or so on. And very early on, I was always surprised how people were open to me, very much welcoming. I never felt really I was pushing anything. Absolutely not. I was an outsider. And I think that position of the outsider gave a lot of like care, that in the way that people were like welcoming me. You know, they wanted to introduce me to something that, because also in general I was really interested in documenting cultural elements that maybe were not really represented, were not really in the mass media or anything. I wanted to, and I still want, obviously, to show the diversity, the other alternative paths, you know. That's basically what I think the goal is nowadays in our normalizing society. It's like, how do you show that actually we're still doing things in a different way? That groups of people here and there are actually still exploring another way to live together and to commune maybe with the divine, or at least to get together and dance together. And so in a way, I've been always extremely welcomed by people who are like, that's so sweet, you're here, that you came all the way, because sometimes it was very far, obviously. And to do that, you know, because there is no money involved in that work. In a sense, I don't sell the films. I think there's like really this simple desire and very simple enthusiasm I have for the people I meet. I'm like, oh, can we make a film? Huh?
You're genuinely interested.
I think it's like, you see me, you kind of get it quickly. I'm like a kid, you know, going around and be like, oh, wow, can we do something together? Can we dance? Can I make a film with you? Because all the films I make, I give them back to the people. First thing, you know, the first thing I do actually is to give them back to the people saying, okay, here's the entire recording. Do whatever you want with it, okay? Please use it and share it with your friends, with your family. It might stay in forms of an archive. It might stay also just to inspire a younger generation to get interested in it again, you know? I used to say at some point, I had this funny quote saying that I'm interested to basically show to the local ones, especially to youngsters, that their grandfathers, grandmothers are as cool as Beyonce, you know, or actually much more cooler. You know?
Much more cooler.
No, in a way, for me, it's really a matter of like changing perspective, changing the way that we look at our surroundings. And again, I think this position of the outsider allows that a bit, you know, to kind of like look at reality under a different angle and to reveal something which for even the ones which are inside this reality. You don't see the painting if you're inside it, you know.
You visited a lot of cities. What do cities tell us about humanity?
Which cities? So many. It's like, you know, I was just sharing now, I was on the scooter with Andrew going around Valletta for the first time, and I was just sharing with him how much I'm interested in architecture, and the architecture of this place is absolutely stunning. I've never seen anything like this, I think. This combination of all these different layers, you know. But also there's something very chaotic, but also very coherent about it, which is very, maybe my favorite type of like cities in a way. And cities basically tell us about how the cities inform us, our behaviors, our way of moving around. They change the way we behave. And I think that I'm interested in architecture in that sense, in urban landscapes, because we need to basically keep those places, cities, urban centers nowadays, as playgrounds as much as possible. I like the word playground in that sense. We have to basically keep a possibility for the locals to reinvent their own space constantly. And that's basically what, in a sense, my films have the same kind of like, I guess, values behind them, you know, trying to show that there is another way to look at it. There is always going to be another way to look at it.
Have you ever chosen to destroy or not release a film because it felt too private?
Almost not, actually. It's kind of funny because I've been releasing so many things, and it's very rare that I do not use any recording. Very few. One of the things which comes to my mind that there is one recording I made in nearby Baghdad in Iraq 2 or 3 years ago, which was very wild. It was a Sufi ceremony, which turned into a pretty hardcore, actually, kind of like a showcasing of strength and blood involved and so on. And that momentum, as you were asking me before, if at some point I was feeling that night I was like, that's just weird. I see what's happening. I don't know how it's gonna end up. The recording is insane, but it's like very hard to look at almost. And I'm like, maybe the world do not need to see that. It's fine, you know. It exists. I like to share a story, but really, fine, you know. It's just really a matter of like, how do you understand that such images or recordings can fit into this saturated world? I mean, we live in a very, very saturated world in terms of information. Music and especially images are all over the place. And I've been making so many films at the same time, so I'm very concerned about that. Is it really worth it? So every time I'm looking at...
So you question it as well. Is it really worth it to produce films?
Yeah, of course. If you ask me even 2 years ago, I was really ready at the end of the pandemic, or outside of the pandemic, but I was really ready to drop it off. I'm like, this is not what we need nowadays. We should not... My priority should not be to make images. Making images nowadays is going to put, from my perspective, is going to put more and more people in front of a screen. Do I want this? No. What do I want? I want to create...
You want to document.
I'm interested in documenting and living that relationship with the people, definitely.
Okay,
but then on the other hand, and that's what I developed for the past almost 10 years, I developed this idea of the live cinema. Basically, I used to, 10, 15 years ago, I was invited sometimes in film festivals and to show my work, and I would arrive in a room and say, hello, here's what the film's about, sort of, here's what we do, okay, we talk a little bit after, and then you push play, and you don't touch it, and it's just like, I could not even watch the films. I was like, this is not my way to look at it. I really want to have another form of interaction with the people, so-called audience. And so I developed this idea of the live cinema, which is to me, the way I can escape this question of the saturation, because I recreate every night, playing live. That's what I will do next week here.
Cool.
I recreate a new film, usually based on all of my recordings. Next week is a bit different because it's a site-specific project. I'm going to record music in Malta and only use those recordings to create the show. But in general, imagine that I have like an hour and a half in front of me, maybe sometimes much longer, with people in a place which is not a cinema. I almost never play in cinema venues. I play in parks. I play in like old factories.
Local spaces. Local spaces.
Local spaces which are not attached to, people are like, oh yeah, this is a music venue. Oh yeah, this is like a gallery. I'm like, no, I'm interested in those in-between spaces because they create another form of relationship with you as a viewer, listener, and what's in front of you, As soon as you're like, how do I sit in this place? Is this the way to look at it? I think it's very fruitful, to question always our habits. And so basically, just to come back to this, this idea of the live cinema has been really saving me regarding this saturation of images, because it brings back people together, and then there is this performance, but then we hang out, It's like, I always like to create
it's like a party.
Yes. It's like a party, or it's like a ceremony. It depends how you look at it. It depends how you go into it. But yes, it's a way to bring physical presence in the same space. And this is the most important thing we have to do nowadays, I believe.
Do you have a favorite film?
One is impossible to say. No, I have so many films. I
can imagine.
I had so many films. I don't know. I would like them to place only one reference here, which is very interesting, but especially because it's related to the Mediterranean and Sicily, which is the work of Vittorio De Seta, which is not a very famous Italian filmmaker, who, when he was still young, in his 30s, it was in the 1950s, he made a series of films named Il Mondo Perduto, which is the most extraordinary series of like 10 short films on traditional fishermen, singing and so on, in southern Italy, Sicily and so on. And all of those short films are absolutely masterpiece of everything. Filmmaking, sound recording, editing, everything is just gorgeous, and it was mostly made by him and a few friends, And that's been still, since I discovered this work, maybe 10 years ago, it's been, wow, like really a godfather to me.
Vincent Moon, how do you wish to be remembered?
I don't care about being remembered. I just hope I can inspire people to explore their own path. In a sense, what I'm doing, I travel around the world for 20 years now without any home. I carry my stuff on my back, and I just meet people in a very direct, simple way. I've always put improvisation at the heart of my practice, living practice, improvisation, so on. So I just hope it can inspire people to try things in such a way, because especially the way we make cinema nowadays went the completely different direction, where we have to work and for years sometimes before seeing the result of our ideas, because it's all about writing and trying to get funds and so on. I love the direct relationship to reality. So I hope that this can inspire people to develop their own language. At the end of the day, it's really about trying to...
And to live in reality rather than online. It's
a long talk about also what is reality then, because I don't think that online reality is not not real reality. No, it's actually another layer on reality. It's like, I said, more layers. But I'm very interested in, at how can we keep using new technologies, definitely. I'm not rejecting them at all, but keep using them to actually bring people, bodies in the same space together. Yes, absolutely.
Vincent Moon, our time is up.
Already?
It was really lovely.
Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure to interview you. Yes. You have to hear me a little bit more speaking Maltese. I have some thank yous.
Please.
And some announcements.
Yes.
So you'll enjoy some more Maltese, and we'll meet at Argotti Gardens then for the live cinema.
In 10 days, I'm very excited.
Għal daw kollha li ħadu pjaċir isegwu dan il-programm Wiċċ and Wiċċ mal-Annej u daw l-intervisti li konna mal-Annejja, u forsi jekk tagħmlu swit il-qalba x'illum l-aħħar wieħed se jkollna Wiċċ and Wiċċ mal-Annej live propju fil-ġonna tal-Argotti. ħajkonna żewġ edizzjonijiet, waħda ma' Jesmond Gallia magħruf bħala tal-Kalora u l-oħra ma' Joe Buzuttil il-Bużu. Dawn se jsiru il-ġimgħa u s-sibt fis-7 esquart fil-ġonna tal-Argotti waqt ir-Ritmu Roots Festival, u tistaq tal-biljetti kemm online kif ukoll mal-bib. U tajb nfakkar ukoll ftit dwar dak li tkellimna dwaru f'dawn l-episodji, ġifieri tkellimna mar-Rajsu, mar-Ringu li tajb insemmu li waqt dan il-programm ħareġ diska ġdida li kien kitiblu l-Budaj u li qatt ma kien ħareġa qabel. Kellna programm dwar l-istrumenti tradizzjonali Maltin u anki iż-żifna tal-kumittiva li għadha popolari ħafna f'Għawdex li se tkun ukoll preżenti waqt il-festival. U nfakkarkom li dawn kollha on demand fuq YouTube ta' Newsbook Malta. U nieħu l-opportunità wkoll illi nirringrazzja lid-direttur artistiku ta' dan il-festival Andrew Alamango illi f'daw l-aħħar 3 snin ħdimna tajjeb ħafna flimkien, afdani ħafna kemm bħala artist viżiv kif ukoll bħala kittieb u din is-sena bħala xandar u preżentatur għaliex se nkun qed nippreżenta wkoll dan il-festival fejn se jiġi ippreżentat dan kollu. Nirringrazzja lit-tim kbir ta' Festivals Malta li jaħdmu bla qiegħda biex itellaw ir-Ritmu Roots Festival minn sena għall-oħra. Tajb insemmi wkoll illi barra il-ħafna għana illi għana fil-oli, għana tal-fatt, hemm ukoll mistiedna internazzjonali, mużiċisti internazzjonali, u biex nagħlaq nieħu l-opportunità biex nirringrazzja lit-tekniċi tagħna Mario Zerafa kif ukoll lill-Art Ermizzi kif ukoll il-kap tal-programmi tagħna Amanda Ċappara illi kifet anki fl-introduzzjoni meta mort b'din l-idea kienet ħerqana ħafna biex inwettquha. Fl-aħħar net nirringrazzja lilkom is-semmija tar-rispons li jurejtu għal dan il-programm Wiċċ and Wiċċ mal-Annej. Vincent, you had the opportunity to listen to Maltese for a longer period now.
And I will dive into it in the next few days. I'm very, very excited.
And we're very curious to see what you're going to create.
Thank you so much. And all of the result is not only going to be screened and performed next Saturday, but also will be online at some point. We will release all those recordings.
And if you want to tell them, have a good day in Maltese, it is il-ġurnata it-tajba.
Il-ġurnata it-tajba.
U fuq dik il-nota, jena Gabriel Lija, insemmilkom.
Festivals Malta għadhom kien waslulkom Wiċċ and Wiċċ mal-Annej, bil-preżentazzjoni ta' Gabriel Lija.